Hello everyone! Today I want to do a video response to a video that RinceyReads recently did on diversity in reading. And what she was looking at particularly was diversity in terms of gender of the author as well as ethnicity of the author, particularly whether they were white or a person of color. And so I just thought her video was fantastic. It talked about something that I hadn't really ever thought about before. And I was just really curious to look at it in my own reading. So I just kind of wanted to do a quick video response. So what RinceyReads did was she went through her entire Goodreads account and looked up the authors of the books that she had read since she's been tracking it on Goodreads, and looked, of course, at gender as well as ethnicity. And I believe what she found was that in terms of gender, it was a pretty good balance. It was, I think, 50-50 pretty much. But it wasn't very balanced in terms of white versus people of color. I think it was around 10% people of color on her video. And so I was really curious to do the same thing and see what my results would be. Now, for the sake of time, I wasn't too ambitious. I only looked at my reading for the current year so far. And it's not a whole lot of books just because I had a slow start to the year. So as of right now, I've completed 34 books, so it's not a huge sample size. But I do feel that it's pretty representative of the books that I typically read. So in that way, I thought it was all right. And I looked at it for the same categories. First, I looked at it for gender. And going into it, I was pretty sure I was going to be just fine. In fact, it ended up being that I was, I think, 52% female and 48% male authors, which doesn't surprise me. I've read a little bit more chick flick than I usually do this year. And of course, that tends to be written by female authors, so I wasn't surprised I was leaning towards the female side, but not off base. It wasn't drastically one way or the other. So I was feeling pretty good about that. But then I looked at my reading in terms of ethnicity, and it really wasn't very good at all. So of the 34 books that I've read this year, 30 of them have been by white authors. Now, of the 4 books that weren't by white authors, and that's about 12%, 2 of them were written by Neal Shusterman, which I was very pleasantly surprised that he was a person of color. I really didn't know that going into his books. But the other 2 were actually 2 manga books that I counted on Goodreads that I read volumes 1 and 2 of Sailor Moon. If I didn't count the manga books, instead of 12% being authors of color, it went down to 6%, which is pathetic. And even of the 2 novels that I read by a person of color, they were the same person of color, because I read Unwind by Neal Shusterman and then I read Unholy. So I'm just not feeling very diverse in my reading at all. So I wasn't surprised. I kind of had a bad feeling when I went to go do this that my results were not going to be good. But when you actually see the numbers and realize who the authors are, it was still, I don't know, it still definitely had an impact on me. Now, the biggest thing I noticed when I actually did the exercise of going through and looking at the ethnicity and gender of these authors was that personally, I don't look at authors at all. I realized that I had never seen a picture of Neal Shusterman or Neil Gaiman. I never bothered to look at their bio. I'm not even a person, I don't even flip to the back and look and, and read a little blurb half the time. I rarely look, I don't look to see their picture or anything like that. So the number one thing that I got out of this exercise was realizing how little I pay attention to authors and how much more I really should be. And I think that's the key. It's just awareness and being aware that, you're making choices every time you pick up a book. And particularly as booktubers, we're projecting our preferences and our interests to other people. I just think as a reviewer, we all should really be much more aware of who we're reviewing. I definitely want to be reading more diverse literature in the future. I'm not going to promise to read one a month just because I know that won't be attainable some months, and I don't want to force myself to read books that I don't necessarily want to at the time. So what I'd like to do is just be more conscious of the books that I'm choosing. I want to make a second video where I'm going to talk about a series of books that I want to read that are by a more diverse background or ethnicity of authors, just because if you're not consciously making an effort to do so, with the marketing efforts that are out there, chances are you're going to be reading a very Caucasian-based author group, just because that's who's getting most of the press. And it's not to say that the authors who are getting attention don't deserve it, But it's the question of whether or not there are fantastic authors out there who aren't getting the same recognition. Thank you so much, RinceyReads, for bringing this topic to YouTube. I think it's really important, and honestly it's really made me rethink how I'm choosing my books, and again, how much attention I actually pay to who the authors are, because I've really never thought about it before, and I think that's kind of embarrassing to admit. But it's true, and I really want to go forward and at least make a more conscious effort in who I choose to read, and just to be much more open-minded and make sure that I'm choosing a more representative, diverse group of authors to read. So that's about it for today. Thanks for dealing with all my ramblings. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.